The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalks of South Chicago, baking the concrete until it radiated heat like an oven. Clara Morgan hunched her narrow shoulders against the glare, her small frame moving with the cautious efficiency of someone accustomed to remaining unseen. At 12 years old, she had mastered the art of invisibility. Her faded blue t-shirt hung loose on her thin frame, and her worn sneakers had long since lost their original color beneath layers of dust and grime. Most people's gazes slid right past her, just another street kid, best ignored. Today, she worked methodically along Monroe Street, checking trash cans near the small cafes where tourists sometimes left half-finished sandwiches or unopened. Bags of chips. Clara's stomach growled fiercely. It had been nearly 2 days since her last proper meal. A sympathetic cook at the diner who occasionally slipped her leftovers when his manager wasn't looking. The money she'd managed to scrounge from returning bottles had gone to bus fare yesterday. A failed trip across town, following a rumor about a shelter with open beds. By the time she'd arrived, the line stretched around the block. It was while digging behind Luigi's Pizzeria that Clara noticed something unusual. In the narrow alley between the restaurant and an abandoned office building stood a black Lincoln Town car, its glossy surface incongruous among the dumpsters and graffiti. More striking still was the driver's door, hanging open, keys dangling. In the ignition, Clara froze, every instinct heightened. In her experience, things that seemed too good to be true always were. She approached cautiously, ears straining for any sound. That's when she heard it, a muffled groan from behind the dumpster. Clara nearly bolted, but something made her pause. Another groan followed by a weak voice. "Hello? Is someone there? Please." Heart hammering against her ribs, Clara peered around the edge of the dumpster. A man lay sprawled on the ground, his wrists and ankles bound with zip ties. Blood matted his silver hair where something had struck his temple, and his expensive suit was torn and soiled. Despite his disheveled state, everything about him, from his manicured nails to his leather shoes, screamed wealth. "Help!" he whispered, eyes focusing on her with desperate intensity. "Please call the police." Clara took an involuntary step backward. Getting involved with the police was the last thing she needed. They'd ask questions, want to know who she was, where her parents were. They might send her back to foster care. "I can pay you," the man added, correctly reading her hesitation. "There's a phone in my car. Just call 911, please." Clara stood frozen, torn between self-preservation and the undeniable need in the stranger's eyes. There was something about his face, something hauntingly familiar that she couldn't place. His features were sharp, his jaw strong despite his age, which she guessed to be somewhere in his 60s. But it was his eyes that held her, deep-set and piercing blue, just like her own. The hairs on Clara's arms rose. Maybe it was nothing, coincidence, tricks of the light. But in that moment, a decision crystallized. She darted to the car, grabbed the phone from the console, and ran back to the alley entrance where she could keep watch while making the call. 911, what's your emergency? "There's a man," Clara said, her voice low and quick, "behind Luigi's Pizzeria, on Monroe Street. He's tied up and hurt. Someone attacked him." "What's your name, sweetheart?" Clara ended the call without answering and slipped back into the alley. The man watched her with a mixture of relief and curiosity. "They're coming," she told him, crouching a safe distance away. "What happened to you?" He grimaced. "My name is Robert Thompson. I believe I was kidnapped for ransom. They must have been spooked by something." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You're rich, then?" The ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I suppose I am." "Thompson Enterprises. Does that mean anything to you?" She shook her head, though the name sounded vaguely familiar from billboards around the city. What's your name? He asked. Clara hesitated, old habits warring with an inexplicable urge to trust this stranger. Clara, she finally said. Something flickered across Robert's face. Recognition. Shock. Before she could analyze it, the wail of approaching sirens filled the air. You should go, he said quickly. But wait. He struggled against his bonds. There's a business card in my jacket pocket. Take it. Call that number tomorrow, please. Clara hesitated only a moment before darting forward, fishing the card from his pocket and disappearing into the maze of back streets she knew so well, the sirens growing louder behind her. She clutched the embossed card tightly in her fist. As she ran, unable to shake the feeling that her life had just irrevocably changed. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type Ijuro. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. Clara spent the night in her usual spot, a forgotten maintenance room in the basement of an old apartment building where a broken lock had provided her sanctuary for the past few months. As she curled on her makeshift bed of flattened cardboard and a stolen beach towel, she examined Robert Thompson's business card in the dim light, filtering through a dusty window well. Robert Thompson, CEO, it proclaimed, in elegant script. Thompson Enterprises. Below was a phone number and an address in the Gold Coast, Chicago's wealthiest neighborhood. Clara ran her thumb over the raised lettering, remembering the man's piercing blue eyes, so unsettlingly like her own. It had to be coincidence. She'd learned long ago that fairy tales didn't happen in real life. Clara's mother, Elaine, had abandoned her 3 years ago, leaving her with an elderly neighbor while she supposedly went job hunting. She never returned. The neighbor, Mrs. Petrovich, had cared for Clara for nearly a year before her heart attack. After that came the foster homes, 4 of them, each worse than the last, until Clara decided living on the streets was preferable to the neglect and abuse she'd endured. She tucked the card into the secret pocket she'd sewn into her backpack, where she kept her most valuable possessions: her mother's tarnished locket containing a faded photo, her birth certificate stolen from the file of her last social worker, and the $72 that represented her life savings. Tomorrow, she decided she would call the number, not because she believed in fairy tales, but because the man had mentioned payment, and Clara was nothing if not practical. The following morning, Clara stood outside a convenience store on Michigan Avenue, staring at the payphone with trepidation. After washing her face and hands in a public bathroom and combing her tangled brown hair with her fingers, she looked marginally presentable, though her clothes still marked her as what she was: homeless. Taking a deep breath, she dialed the number from the card. "Mr. Thompson's office," answered a crisp female voice. Clara nearly hung up. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson. He gave me his card yesterday. My name is Clara." A long pause. "One moment, please." The silence stretched until Clara was certain she'd been forgotten. Then a different voice came on the line, the man from the alley, his tone noticeably warmer. "Clara, you called. You said you'd pay me for helping you." Another pause. "I did. And I will, but there's something else, something I need to discuss with you. Could you come to my office?" Warning bells sounded in Clara's mind. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," he said, an unexpected urgency in his voice. "It's important. I'll send a car to pick you up, anywhere you choose. You can bring anyone you trust, and I promise you'll leave with the money I owe you, regardless of what else we discuss." Clara wavered. Her instincts told her to run, but curiosity and hunger pulled in the opposite direction. "Fine," she said finally. "There's a library on State Street. I'll be on the front steps in an hour." Exactly 1 hour later, a gleaming black car pulled to the curb before the library. The driver, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stepped out and approached Clara. "Clara?" she inquired with a smile. "I'm Maria. Mr. Thompson sent me to bring you to his office." Cautiously, Clara followed her to the car, sliding into the plush leather-back seat with wide eyes. As they pulled into traffic, Maria glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Thompson was quite insistent that you be treated as an honored guest," she said. "There's water and snacks in the compartment beside you." Clara found a bottle of water and several granola bars, which she devoured with barely concealed desperation. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a towering glass skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. Maria escorted her through security, which caused Clara several anxious moments, and up to the top floor in a private elevator. The doors opened onto a reception area where a sleek, professionally dressed woman sat behind a marble desk. She rose immediately. "Clara, Mr. Thompson is expecting you. Please follow me." She was led into a vast corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Robert Thompson stood as she entered, looking remarkably recovered from his ordeal. His head wound was bandaged, but he moved with ease as he came around his desk to greet her. "Clara," he said warmly, though his eyes held a strange intensity that made her shift uncomfortably. "Thank you for coming. Please sit down." Clara perched on the edge of an imposing leather chair, her backpack clutched protectively on her lap. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here," he began, returning to his seat. "The truth is, I believe we may be connected in a way neither of us realized until yesterday." Clara's heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" Thompson reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a manila folder. "Your full name is Clara Elaine Morgan, isn't it? Born October 15th, 2012, at Northwestern Memorial Hospital?" Clara recoiled. "How do you know that?" "Because," he said quietly, opening the folder to reveal a birth certificate, her birth certificate, "my daughter was your mother." The world seemed to tilt sideways as Clara stared at the document before her. There, listed as mother, Elaine. Thompson Morgan, a name she knew attached to one she didn't. "You're lying," she whispered, though a part of her knew it wasn't true. Those eyes, her eyes, staring back at her across the desk, belonged to family. "I wish I were," he replied, his voice heavy with regret. "The truth is, I haven't seen my daughter in nearly 14 years. We had a falling out when she was 20. I was controlling, demanding, and when she defied me by marrying a man I considered beneath her, your father, I cut her off completely. I refused all contact, and then 3 years ago I received notice that she had died, a car accident in Wisconsin." Clara flinched as if struck. "Dead? No, she's not. She just left. She's coming back." Thompson's expression softened with unbearable pity. "Clara, I'm so sorry. After I was rescued yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about you, this young girl with my family's eyes. I had my security team run your description against missing persons reports, and when they found your file, I knew. The police have been looking for you since you ran away from your last foster home. And I've been looking for any connection to my daughter for years." Clara stood abruptly, sending her chair skidding backward. "You're making this up. My mum is fine. She had to go away for a while." "Please," Thompson said, rising slowly with his hands extended in a placating gesture. "I understand this is a shock, but you don't have to face it alone anymore. I'm your grandfather, Clara, your only living relative. And if you'll let me, I want to take care of you." Clara backed toward the door, shaking her head. "I don't believe you, and even if it's true, where were you all this time, when I was being passed from home to home, when I was sleeping on cardboard and digging through trash? Where was my rich grandfather then?" The words hit Thompson like physical blows. "I didn't know," he whispered. "If I had, God, Clara, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you. My pride cost me my daughter. Please don't let it cost me my granddaughter too." For one suspended moment, their identical blue eyes locked in a silent battle of will. Then Clara turned and fled, ignoring Thompson's calls as she raced down the hallway to the elevators. What if he's telling the truth? The question haunted her as she pounded the button repeatedly. What if Mom really is gone forever? What if I'm not alone after all? But the elevator arrived before she could resolve her internal struggle, and Clara stepped inside, punching the button for the lobby. As the doors began to close, a hand shot through the gap. Maria, the driver, her expression concerned but not threatening. "Clara, wait," she said gently, holding the doors but not entering. "Mr. Thompson asked me to give you this." She extended an envelope. "It's the payment he promised, and his private number. You don't have to decide anything now. Just think about it, please." After a moment's hesitation, Clara accepted the envelope, and Maria withdrew her hand, allowing the doors to close. Alone in the descending elevator, Clara leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Inside the envelope was $500 in crisp bills and a handwritten note with a phone number. At the bottom, in an elegant scrawl, were the words, "Whatever you decide, this is yours. No strings attached. Your grandfather." Clara stumbled out of the building into the bright afternoon sunlight, feeling as though the ground beneath her feet had turned to quicksand. Everything she thought, she knew about her life, about her mother, had just been upended. She needed time to think, to process. With nowhere else to go, she headed for the lake, where the expansive view of water meeting sky had always helped clear her mind. Will Clara accept that her mother is truly gone? Can she learn to trust the grandfather who claims to want to help her now? Or is this all an elaborate trick that will leave her even more hurt and alone? The next chapter awaits. Days passed in a blur as Clara grappled with her new reality. She alternated between denial, anger, and crushing grief as she processed the likelihood that her mother was truly gone. The money from Thompson remained untouched in her backpack as she wandered the city, sleeping in different spots each night, unable to return to her usual places. It was as if learning her true identity had rendered her usual life impossible to continue. On the fourth day after her meeting with Thompson, Clara found herself outside his company's building again, drawn back like a moth to flame. She stood across the street, watching employees come and go, wondering which ones knew about her. Had Thompson told everyone he'd discovered a homeless granddaughter? Was he already regretting his offer? As Clara stood debating whether to approach or flee, fate intervened in the form of a Blacktown car pulling up to the curb, the same model she'd found Thompson beside that fateful day. Her grandfather emerged from the building speaking intently, with a younger man in an equally expensive suit. When Thompson glanced up and saw her, he froze mid-sentence. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other across the busy street. Then Thompson dismissed his colleague with a quick word and started toward her. Clara's instinct was to run, but something held her in place. Perhaps the same inexplicable connection that had made her help him in the first place. "I was hoping you'd come back," he said when he reached her, his voice carefully neutral, giving her space despite the obvious emotion in his eyes. Clara looked down at her scuffed shoes. "I needed to know if it's true about my mom." Thompson nodded solemnly. "I have the police report. Her dental records confirmed." "I'm sorry, Clara. I truly am." A sob escaped before she could stop it. The first she'd allowed herself since hearing the news. Thompson hesitated, then cautiously placed a hand on her shoulder. When she didn't pull away, he guided her gently toward his car. "Come with me," he said. "Just for today. Let me show you something." Danny, they drove in silence, leaving the gleaming towers of downtown behind for the tree-lined streets of the North Shore. Finally, they turned into the driveway of a stately but not ostentatious home, set back from the road, surrounded by carefully tended gardens. "This was where your mother grew up," Thompson explained as they got out of the car. "It's been standing empty since my wife passed away 5 years ago. I couldn't bear to sell it, but I couldn't live with the memories either." He led her up the front walk, unlocking the door with a key that looked rarely used. Inside, the house was immaculate, but had the still preserved quality of a museum. Thompson moved through the foyer with purpose, leading Clara up a curved staircase to a bedroom at the end of the hallway. "This was Elaine's room," he said quietly, opening the door to reveal a space frozen in time, a teenage girl's sanctuary from 20 years ago. Posters of bands Clara didn't recognize adorned the walls, and shelves lined with books and trophies flanked a window seat overlooking the backyard. Clara entered slowly, trailing her fingers over the desk, the bedspread, touching these pieces of her mother's former life with reverence. "I kept it exactly as she left it," Thompson admitted. "First out of anger, I refused to erase her, even though I wouldn't speak to her. Later, out of hope that she might return." His voice broke. "She never did." Clara paused before a bulletin, board covered with photos. Her mother as a teenager, smiling with friends, posing with a horse, receiving a diploma. Happy, whole, loved. Nothing like the haunted, distracted woman Clara remembered. "She never told me about any of this," Clara whispered. "About you. This house, her life before. She hardly talked about the past at all." "I imagine it was painful." "For her," Thompson replied, remaining in the doorway, as if reluctant to intrude on Clara's exploration. "Our estrangement broke her heart, just as it broke mine, though I was too stubborn to admit it until it was too late." Clara turned to him, suddenly fierce. "Why should I trust you now? How do I know you won't throw me away too, the first time I disappoint you?" Thompson flinched as if she'd slapped him, but met her gaze steadily. "You don't. You have no reason to trust me, and every reason to doubt. All I can say is that losing Elaine taught me the hardest lesson of my life, that pride is a poor substitute for love, and that some mistakes can never be undone." He paused, swallowing hard. "But some perhaps can be redeemed if you'll give me the chance." Clara turned back to the photos, studying her mother's young face. "I need time," she said finally. "Of course," Thompson agreed immediately. "Take all the time you need. But please, don't disappear again. Stay here while you decide. The guest room is comfortable, and you'd have complete privacy. No pressure, no demands, just a safe place to think." The offer was tempting, more than tempting. A real bed, hot showers, regular meals, security. Clara glanced around the room once more, imagining her mother at her age, sitting at the desk, dreaming of her future, a future that had ultimately included Clara, despite whatever hardships had come before. "Okay," she said quietly. "Just until I decide." The relief on Thompson's face was palpable. "Thank you," he said simply. "Have you ever discovered something that completely changed how you saw your past or your family? Or do you know someone who has had a revelation like Clara's? Share your experience in the comments." The adjustment to living in Thompson's house was more difficult than Clara had anticipated. After years of constant vigilance and self-reliance, the quiet safety of the suburban home felt almost threatening in its unfamiliarity. She startled at normal household sounds, hoarded food in her room, and slept fully clothed on top of the covers, ready to flee at a moment's notice. Thompson respected her wariness, giving her space while ensuring her basic needs were met. He arranged for new clothes to be delivered without comment when he noticed her washing the same few items in the bathroom sink. He stocked the kitchen, With simple foods, she could prepare herself when she declined to join him for meals. And most importantly, he asked no questions when she disappeared for hours into the extensive gardens, seeking solitude to process her new circumstances. It was during one such solitary expedition, nearly a week after her arrival, that Clara discovered the old treehouse hidden among the branches of a massive oak at the property's edge. Weathered but sturdy, it beckoned with the promise of both elevation and security, two things she'd always craved. She climbed up swiftly, finding inside a simple wooden platform with low railings and a small bench beneath a window cut into the wall. Someone had carved initials into the bench, E.T. plus D.M., Elaine Thompson and David Morgan, her parents. Clara traced the letters with her fingertips, a lump forming in her throat. "She brought him here once," said a voice from below. Clara peered through the trap door to see Thompson standing at the base of the tree, looking up. "Against my explicit instructions. I came home early and found them up there, laughing." And a sad smile crossed his face. "I was furious, ordered him off my property, told Elaine she was grounded for a month." "Why?" Clara asked, genuinely curious. What was so terrible about him? Thompson sighed heavily. Nothing, in retrospect. He was a musician, talented by all accounts, but with no steady income, no practical ambitions. I wanted more security for Elaine, a respectable husband with a respectable career. He shook his head. I couldn't see past my own expectations to what would actually make her happy. He fell silent, and Clara found herself filling the void. My dad died when I was 4. Car accident. I barely remember him, just music. He was always playing guitar or piano, and laughing. He laughed a lot. Thompson's expression softened. She never told me about his death, or about you. If she had. He trailed off, then straightened. His shoulders. I've kept something of hers for you, if you'd like to see it. Intrigued despite herself, Clara descended from the treehouse and followed Thompson back to the house. In his study, he unlocked a drawer and withdrew a small jewelry
box.
This was Elaine's, he explained, opening it to reveal a delicate silver charm bracelet. Her mother, your grandmother, started it when Elaine was born. A new charm for each birthday and important milestone. He held it out to Clara. It belongs to you now. Clara accepted the bracelet with trembling hands, examining each tiny silver charm. A baby booty, a teddy bear, a ballet slipper, a graduation cap, a music note. The pieces of her mother's life, preserved in miniature. "Thank you," she whispered, fastening it around her wrist. The weight of it felt strange, but not unwelcome, a tangible connection to the family she'd never known she had. That evening, for the first time, Clara joined Thompson for dinner. They ate mostly in silence, but it was a silence that felt less strained than before. Afterward, instead of retreating immediately to her room, Clara lingered in the living room, examining the family photos displayed on the mantel. "I've been thinking," Thompson said carefully, watching her from the doorway, "about school. The fall term starts in 3 weeks. I could enroll you, if you decided to stay." Clara stiffened. "I haven't been to school in over a year. I understand. There would be adjustments, perhaps tutoring, to help you catch up. But it's important, for your future." "What makes you think I have a future?" The words escaped before Clara could stop them, raw and honest in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Thompson crossed the room slowly, stopping beside her before the fireplace. "Because you're a survivor, Clara. Like your mother. Like me. Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide about staying here, your future is the one thing I'm certain of." Clara turned to study his face, searching for the manipulation or calculation she'd come to expect from adults. Instead, she found only sincerity and a quiet hope that mirrored her own buried wishes. "I'll think about it," she said finally. It wasn't a commitment, but it wasn't a rejection either. It was a beginning. As summer faded into early autumn, an uneasy truce evolved into a tentative relationship between Clara and her grandfather. There were setbacks, arguments when Thompson's ingrained authoritarianism clashed with Clara's fierce independence, moments of grief when memories of Elaine surfaced unexpectedly, days when the weight of so much change threatened to overwhelm them both. But there were also breakthroughs, shared laughter over old family stories, the discovery of inherited traits, both good and bad, and gradually the formation of new routines that accommodated both their needs. Thompson hired a patient tutor who helped Clara prepare for her return to formal education, supporting her without judgment as she worked to overcome the gaps in her learning. Clara, for her part, began to lower her defenses enough to accept the help offered, though she remained wary of becoming too dependent or vulnerable. The true turning point came unexpectedly, 3 days before school was scheduled to begin. Clara was in her room, and she had begun to think of it as her room when she heard the doorbell ring. Curious, she crept to the top of the stairs where she could overhear the conversation at the front door. "Mr. Thompson," an unfamiliar male voice. "I'm Detective Ramirez. This is my partner, Detective Chen. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the kidnapping incident." What happens when the detectives reveal new information about Robert Thompson's kidnapping? And why has Clara's past suddenly caught up with her? The stakes have never been higher as secrets threaten to unravel everything. "Of course," Thompson replied, leading the detectives into his study. Clara hesitated only briefly before slipping down the stairs and positioning herself near the partially open door where she could listen unseen. "We've arrested the men responsible for your abduction," Detective Ramirez explained, "but something doesn't add up. According to their statements, they were hired anonymously through an encrypted messaging service. The job was specifically to grab you, tie you up, and leave you in that alley." "I don't understand," Thompson said, confusion evident in his voice. "There was no ransom demand, no threat. They just left me there to be found." "Exactly," Detective Chen interjected. "It appears the goal wasn't money or even harm, just to ensure you were in that specific location at that specific time." A long silence followed, broken finally by Thompson's soft exclamation. "Clara." Clara's heart stuttered in her chest. "They wanted me to meet Clara," Thompson continued, his voice gaining conviction. "But how could anyone have known she would be the one to find me? Unless someone knew her routines," Detective Ramirez finished. "The areas she frequented when she was homeless." "But who would—" Thompson trailed off, then his tone hardened. "The foster care system. Someone tracked her movements after she ran away, waited for the right moment." "We believe so," Chen agreed. "And we have a theory about who. Your former business partner, Victor Hargrove. Financial records show he's been systematically embezzling from your company for years. Having your granddaughter enter the picture, a potential heir, threatened his position." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle her gasp. She remembered the name Hargrove from conversations she'd overheard, Thompson's oldest friend, the godfather of his daughter. "Victor knew about Elaine's death," Thompson said slowly. "He helped me search for her initially. He would have known about Clara's existence from the death certificate, even if I didn't." "We believe he's been monitoring Clara for some time," Ramirez said grimly, "waiting for an opportunity to either discredit her or, failing that, use her as leverage against you." Clara didn't wait to hear more. She burst through the study door, startling all 3 men. "He's been watching me all this time?" Thompson rose immediately, crossing to her side. "Clara, is it true?" she demanded, looking from Thompson to the detectives and back. "Was finding you that day a setup? Was none of it real?" "The kidnapping was orchestrated," Detective Chen confirmed gently. "But your actions afterward calling for help, coming to see Mr. Thompson. Those were your choices alone. And my mother, Clara asked, her voice breaking. Was that part of his plan too, making me believe she was dead? A heavy silence fell over the room. Thompson knelt before her, taking her trembling hands in his. Clara, I've seen the police report, the dental records. Your mother's death was confirmed 3 years ago. But what if it wasn't? She insisted, desperate hope warring with reason. What if that was fake too? What if she's looking for me right now? The pity in Thompson's eyes was answer enough. Clara pulled away from him, backing toward the door. I need to be alone. This time, no one tried to stop her as she fled the house, racing through the gardens to the treehouse that had become her sanctuary. She climbed up and huddled in the corner, knees drawn to her chest, mind racing with possibilities both terrible and wonderful. Was her entire reunion with her grandfather an elaborate deception, or was it the one real thing in a life that had been shaped by lies and manipulations beyond her control? And if her mother truly was gone forever, what did that mean for her future? Clara remained in the treehouse until dusk fell, watching the garden below transform in the fading light. Finally, as stars began to appear in the darkening sky, she heard footsteps approaching. Thompson appeared at the base of the tree, looking up with concern. "May I come up?" he called. "There's something I need to show you." Clara hesitated, then nodded silently. Thompson climbed the ladder with surprising agility for his age, settling on the bench opposite her with a sigh. "I should have shown you this sooner," he said, withdrawing an envelope from his jacket pocket. "I was trying to protect you from more pain, but I see now that was wrong. You deserve the truth, all of it." He handed her the envelope. Inside was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. "Woman dies in highway collision," read the headline, above a photo of a wrecked car. The accompanying article described how Elaine Morgan, 34, had been killed instantly when her vehicle was struck by a semi-truck that crossed the center line during a rainstorm. The accident had occurred in a small town in Wisconsin, far from Chicago. "I hired private investigators," Thompson said quietly, as Clara stared at the article. "They confirmed it was her. The DNA tests were conclusive. I'm sorry, Clara. So very sorry." A tear splashed onto the paper, blurring the ink, then another and another, until Clara was sobbing openly, releasing years of pent-up grief and confusion. Thompson moved cautiously to her side, placing a tentative arm around her shoulders. When she didn't pull away, he drew her closer, offering the comfort she'd denied herself for so long. "I kept waiting," she choked out between sobs. "Every birthday, every Christmas, I thought if I just stayed where she left me, she'd come back eventually." "I understand," Thompson murmured, his own voice thick with emotion. "I waited too, waited for Elaine to forgive me, to come home, until it was too late." They sat together as Clara's tears gradually subsided, the shared grief forming a bond between them that neither had anticipated. When she finally spoke again, her voice was steadier. "What happens now with this Victor person?" "The police are building their case," Thompson replied. "He'll face charges for the kidnapping, the embezzlement, possibly for interfering with the foster care system to monitor you. He won't hurt anyone else." Clara nodded, processing this. "And what about us? What happens with us?" Thompson took a deep breath. "That depends entirely on you, Clara. I want you to stay. I want to be your family, to give you the home, the education, the opportunities you deserve. But I understand if you can't forgive the past, or if you need more time." Clara looked down at the charm bracelet on her wrist, thinking of her mother, who had loved and been loved in this very house, despite the conflicts that came later. She thought of her father, whose music and laughter remained her earliest memories. And she thought of herself, no longer the stray, no longer alone, but still uncertain of her place in the world. "I want to try," she said finally, meeting Thompson's gaze. "I can't promise it will be easy. I'm still angry about what happened with my mum, about the years I spent alone when I didn't have to be, but I want to try." Relief and joy transformed Thompson's face. "That's all I ask," he said softly. "One day at a time." As they climbed down from the treehouse together, the stars fully emerged overhead, brilliant against the darkness. Clara paused to look up at them, remembering how she used to search for them even in the light-polluted city, finding comfort in their constant presence. "My mum used to tell me that when people die, they become stars," she said quietly, "that they watch over us from up there." Thompson followed her gaze upward. "I'd like to believe that," he replied. "That Elaine is watching us now. That she knows we found each other." Clara nodded, a small smile touching her lips for the first time in days. "Maybe she helped," Clara suggested. "Maybe she made sure I was in that alley at the right time." Thompson squeezed her shoulder gently. "I wouldn't put it past her. She always did find ways to get what she wanted, eventually." Together, they walked back to the house that was slowly becoming their home, the path ahead uncertain, but no longer walked alone. The weekend before school began, Thompson surprised Clara with a visit to her old neighborhood. He didn't explain their purpose until they were parked outside a familiar rundown apartment building. "I thought you might want to collect anything you left behind," he said carefully, "or say goodbye to anyone important to you." Clara stared at the building, conflicting emotions churning within her. "I don't have much," she admitted. "Just a few things in my hiding spot, if no one's found it." "Take your time," Thompson said. "I'll wait here." Clara navigated the building's maze of hallways with practiced ease, slipping into the basement maintenance room that had been her sanctuary. To her relief, the loose ceiling panel where she'd hidden her few treasures remained undisturbed. She retrieved a small tin box containing her mother's faded library card, a smooth riverstone her father had given her, claiming it had magical properties, and a dog-eared paperback, a fantasy novel about an orphan who discovers her royal heritage. As she emerged from the building, these meager possessions clutched to her chest, Clara spotted a familiar figure slouching against a nearby wall. Mike, a teenager who had often shared food and information with her during her months on the street, did a double-take when he saw her. "Clara," he called, approaching cautiously. "Where have you been? You just disappeared." She hesitated, glancing back at Thompson waiting in the car. "It's complicated. I found my grandfather. I'm living with him now." Mike's eyebrows shot up as he assessed the expensive car. "For real? You're not like being trafficked or something?" Despite everything, Clara laughed. "No, it's legit. I'm starting school next week." "Damn," Mike said, genuinely impressed. "Good for you, seriously." He shuffled awkwardly. "So I guess you won't be around anymore." "Probably not," Clara admitted. Then impulsively, she dug into her pocket and pulled out $50 from her still untouched payment from Thompson. "Here, for all the times you shared your food." Mike shook his head. "Keep it. You earned some good luck." He glanced at the car again. "Just don't forget about us, okay? When you're all fancy and rich." "Never," Clara promised, surprising them both by giving him a quick hug before hurrying back to the car. "Friend of yours?" Thompson asked as they pulled away. "Yeah," Clara said, watching Mike's figure recede in the side mirror. "One of the good ones," Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps we could help him too, if he's interested." Clara turned to him in surprise. "Really? You'd do that?" "I've spent too many years focusing only on myself and my business," Thompson replied. "It's time I used my resources for something more meaningful." Clara looked down at the tin box in her lap, thinking of all the others like her. Children, alone, forgotten, struggling to survive. "I'd like that," she said softly. The first day of school arrived with a mixture of terror and excitement. Clara had forgotten how it felt to have a normal schedule, normal concerns like homework and making friends. Thompson drove her himself, lingering in the car until she disappeared through the main doors, surrounded by streams of chattering students. The day was both better and worse than she'd expected. Better because her tutor had prepared her well, enough that she didn't feel completely lost academically. Worse because 3 years on the streets had left her woefully unprepared for the social dynamics of middle school. By lunch period, she was overwhelmed, retreating to an empty table at the cafeteria's edge. She was picking listlessly at her sandwich when a girl with bright purple hair and a scattering of freckles dropped into the seat across from her. "You're new," the girl stated. "I'm Zoe, 7th grade. You?" "Clara, also 7th. Zoe nodded approvingly. "Cool. Want to know who to avoid and who's decent around here?" Clara's lips twitched in a small smile. "Definitely." The next hour passed, in a blur of names, warnings, and suggestions, as Zoe provided an insider's guide to Davidson Middle School. By the time the bell rang, Clara felt marginally less adrift in this new world. "See you tomorrow," Zoe called over her shoulder as they parted ways. "If you want, you can sit with us at lunch." A simple offer, but one that made Clara's chest tight with unexpected emotion. She managed a nod and a wave before hurrying to her next class, already mentally rehearsing what she'd tell Thompson about her day. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm to Clara's life. Mornings in the bright chaos of school, afternoons doing homework in the treehouse or in her gradually personalizing bedroom, evenings with Thompson as they slowly built a relationship, founded on shared grief, but growing into something uniquely their own. There were still difficult days. Days when Clara retreated into herself, overwhelmed by memories or fears. Days when Thompson's attempts at parenting struck the wrong chord, triggering her defenses. Days when the gulf between her past and present seemed unbridgeable. But there were good days too. The day Zoe came over for a movie night and declared the house seriously epic. The day Thompson took her to his office and proudly introduced her to his staff as "my granddaughter who saved my life." The day Clara received her first A on a history project and Thompson ceremoniously affixed it to the refrigerator with star-shaped magnets. As Halloween approached, bringing with it the first anniversary of her mother's birthday since learning of her death, Clara found herself increasingly withdrawn. Thompson noticed but didn't press, giving her space while making it clear he was available whenever she was ready to talk. The evening of October 20th, Clara finally sought him out in his study. "My mum would have been 37 tomorrow," she said without preamble. Thompson set aside his reading glasses. "Yes, she would have. I want to do something, to remember her." "What would you like to do?" Clara twisted the charm bracelet around her wrist, an unconscious habit she'd developed. She always said her happiest memories were at the lake. Could we go there? Maybe bring flowers or something? "Of course," Thompson agreed immediately. "We could have a small ceremony. Just the two of us." The following day dawned clear and crisp, perfect autumn weather. They drove to a secluded spot on Lake Michigan's shore, where Thompson spread a blanket on the sand while Clara arranged a bouquet of white roses, her mother's favorite, in a small ceramic vase. "I used to imagine conversations with her," Clara admitted as they sat side by side, watching waves lap against the shore. "When things were really bad in the foster homes or when I was scared at night on the streets, I'd pretend she was there, telling me to be brave, to hold on just a little longer." Thompson nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "I did something similar after your grandmother died. Found myself turning to tell her things, asking her advice even though she was gone." He paused. "I think it's how we keep them with us." "Do you think she knew I'd be okay? In the end?" Clara asked, the question that had haunted her for months finally finding voice. "I believe she hoped so with all her heart," Thompson replied. "And I believe if she could see you now, your strength, your resilience, your capacity for forgiveness, she would be incredibly proud. As am I." Clara leaned against his shoulder, accepting the embrace he offered. They sat in companionable silence as the sun began its descent, painting the lake in shades of gold and amber. "I've been thinking," Clara said eventually, "about changing my name. Not Morgan, just my middle name." "Oh?" Thompson prompted gently. "To Marie, after Grandma. Elaine always said it was her middle name too." She glanced up at him. "Would that be okay?" Thompson's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Clara Marie Thompson Morgan," he said, testing the sound of it. "I think it's perfect. A connection to both sides of your family, both parts of your story." Clara smiled, feeling a sense of rightness settle over her. "My story's not just about the past anymore," she said. "It's about now, too, and what comes next." What comes next? The phrase lingered between them, full of possibility rather than dread for the first time in Clara's young life. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Thompson paused, looking back at the flowers they were leaving behind. "Happy birthday, Elaine," he said softly. "We found each other, just as you would have wanted. We're taking care of each other now." Clara added her own silent goodbye, a promise to carry her mother's memory forward into the life she was building. A life no longer defined by what she had lost, but by what she had found. As they walked back to the car together, grandfather and granddaughter, the setting sun cast their shadows long before them, stretching toward a future neither could have imagined just months before, but one they would navigate together, one day at a time. The transition from autumn to winter brought new milestones. Clara's first Thanksgiving in a real home since her mother's disappearance. Her first report card, mostly B's with an A in English, that made Thompson beam with pride. The gradual transformation of her bedroom from a temporary refuge to a personal sanctuary. Walls now adorned with posters, shelves filled with books Thompson encouraged her to select during weekend trips to the bookstore. December arrived with swirling snow and the awkward question of Christmas traditions. Neither was sure how to approach the holiday. Thompson hadn't celebrated properly since his wife's death, and Clara's memories of Christmas were a mixed bag of brief happiness with her mother and bitter disappointments in foster care. "We could skip it," Thompson suggested tentatively one evening as they passed an elaborate house display. "Go somewhere warm instead, Florida perhaps." Clara considered this, then shook her head. "No, I think we should try. Maybe start our own traditions." She glanced at him sideways. "Unless you hate Christmas." A genuine laugh escaped him, still a rare enough sound that Clara treasured each occurrence. "I don't hate it. I just forgot how to enjoy it for a while." "Me too," Clara admitted. "Maybe we can remember together." They started small. A tree they decorated with simple ornaments, including several handmade by Clara in her art class. Stockings hung from the mantel, 3 of them, the third bearing Elaine's name in Clara's careful writing. A wreath for the door, lights outlining the windows. Nothing excessive, but enough to acknowledge the season and their tentative hope for the future. On Christmas Eve, they attended a community concert where Zoe's older brother was performing with his band. Afterward, Thompson surprised Clara by taking her to a small restaurant near his office. "I thought we might start another tradition," he explained, as they settled at a table overlooking the river, its banks frosted with snow. "A special dinner. Just the 2 of us, every Christmas Eve." "I'd like that," Clara said, smoothing her napkin over her lap with uncharacteristic self-consciousness. She had dressed up for the occasion in one of her new outfits, a green sweater dress with leggings and boots, and Thompson had responded by wearing a tie she'd never seen before, patterned with tiny snowflakes. They ordered their meals, talking easily about school and friends and plans for the upcoming winter break. As they waited for dessert, Thompson cleared his throat. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. "I know we agreed to wait until tomorrow for gifts, but this one seems appropriate for tonight." Clara accepted the package curiously. Inside was a velvet box containing a silver charm, a tiny house with a tree beside it. "For your bracelet," Thompson explained as she examined it. "I thought, well, it represents your new home, our home." Clara swallowed past the lump in her throat. "It's perfect," she whispered, immediately attaching it to her bracelet beside the other charms. "Thank you." Thompson smiled, clearly pleased by her reaction. "There's something else, something I've been wanting to discuss with you." Clara looked up, suddenly alert to the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" "I've spoken with my lawyers," he said carefully, "about making our arrangement more permanent." "You mean adoption?" Clara said, the word both thrilling and terrifying. Thompson nodded. "Yes, legal guardianship immediately, with adoption to follow if you're comfortable with that. It would make everything official. Your place in my life, my responsibility to you. Your future would be secure, no matter what happens." Clara stared at the charm bracelet on her wrist, each small silver piece representing a chapter in her family's story. The baby booty from her mother's birth, the graduation cap from her achievements, the music note that hinted at her father's passion. And now, the house that symbolized her present and future with the grandfather she'd never known existed just months ago. "What would it mean?" she asked finally. "For my name, for everything?" "Your name could stay exactly as it is," Thompson assured her. "Nothing would change in our day-to-day lives. It would simply provide legal recognition of what we already know to be true, that we're family." Family. The word resonated through Clara with unexpected power. For so long she had been alone, believing the only family she had was lost to her forever. Now, against all odds, she had found a new branch of that family tree, not a replacement for what was lost, but an extension, a continuation. "Yes," she said, the decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. "I want that. I want to be your family, officially." The smile that broke across Thompson's face was like sunrise after the longest night. He reached across the table to clasp her hand. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me a second chance at family, for letting me be part of your life." Clara returned his smile, feeling the last lingering barriers around her heart begin to dissolve. "Thank you for finding me," she replied, "even if it took a kidnapping and a rescue to make it happen." They laughed together, the sound bright and healing in the warm restaurant as snow began to fall softly outside, covering the city in a blanket of white possibility. Later that night, as Clara prepared for bed in her room, truly her room now, in every way that mattered, she paused before the window, looking out at the moonlit garden below. Somewhere beyond the clouds, she imagined her mother watching, perhaps with her father beside her, seeing the unexpected miracle that had brought their daughter home. Not the home Elaine had known, but a new one built from the ashes of grief and misunderstanding, a home where the past was honored, but not allowed to dictate the future. A home where Clara was no longer the stray, but a beloved granddaughter, a student, a friend, a child with a name, a history, and a future bright with promise. "We're okay, Mum," she whispered to the night sky. "We found each other. We're going to be okay." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara believed it with her whole heart. Congratulations! Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's. Story on this same channel.